So we are going to use Kali Linux today, just like last week, right? You visit the site, you would download. If you're using Edge, make sure you click Save As at the top. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to find the right Kali VBox file. Once you download, you would have the zip folder, right click, show more options, 7-zip, extract file. We've learned this. I think we've done this. This is our 5th week. So maybe over the last 4 weeks. Okay, so make sure that we're able to download, extract, and run our Kali. Do not run from the zip folder. So check your folder, even though it shows open and it shows the file. Check your folder, make sure it's unzipped. All right, then once you load Kali, you're gonna log in using Kali. And if you have a hard time accessing your folder or your Kali, let me know. Let me know if you have questions. So we're gonna do damn vulnerable web app, right? You can install the app on itself, but I kind of wanted to give you the quick rundown on what the component really goes into a web app that's vulnerable. So we're gonna do more of a manual web server with database and PHP component that goes into it. So yeah, you can host a web app from your server, and we're not going to have a lot of security on it. But as you probably have seen in prior lab, or if you watched my video, I talked about DVWA and other classes as well. So it's just basically a pre-built tool that generates that uses web services to host app that's not secure. So once we're logged in, we're going to open up the terminal. And we're going to clone this, the DVWA. Gonna ask you for your password, so type that in. The cursor doesn't move, so just keep typing. And you can also do sudo app install DVWA, but simply we're just gonna pull the directory for this particular app or this particular program, and then we're gonna do a sudo mv DVWA. And we're going to change the folder name to the lowercase DVWA. So when you do the MV here, we just want to make it easier by renaming it. Then next, what we're going to do is we are going to set, read, write, and execute by using 777. If you took Linux class, right, or OS classes, you would learn that that's going to give you full permission. So we can copy and paste this in if you want it fast, or you can type. And then once you change your folder permission, we're going to access the configuration folder inside the DVWA. So by using a change directory. Okay. So at this point, we're in the subfolder of DVWA. And we have already modified its permission, the parent folder permission. So it should have inheritance on the inside, which is the config folder. And within that, we'll be able to access the configuration file or the PHP file accordingly. So what we're going to do is we are going to copy the config inc PHP distribution to config inc PHP. Okay. We want to do this for backup purposes. So whenever that you modify an actual program configuration file, you want to have a copy of it just in case. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do that. You can copy and paste, or you can type. That's up to you. Then what we're going to do is we are going to, I modified this a little bit based on the last year version. I wanted to break down the step a little bit clearer. So what we're going to do is we're going to access this file, the PHP file, and then we're going to modify the user account within it. So when you do sudo nano config inc.php, it's going to open up a file, the PHP file, and within that, you can modify your user account. So by default, this user account is already existed, right? So I would use the arrow key down, the down arrow key to modify the DB user. So on the right side, after the equal, I'm going to go ahead, don't remove the quotation mark now. Okay, backspace, and we're going to call it test user. Okay, make sure it's still in the single quotation mark. So for the DB user, we're going to change it to test user. And then you're going to use the arrow key down. We're going to change this account password to regular password with no symbol. So PASSWORD. Make sure it's still in the quotation mark. So those are the only two things that we're going to change. And it tells me that for the database server, for my SQL server, these are the accounts that I have, or this is the account that I have. This is the password for the database, and this is the database. And it's hosted on, and it's using the loopback address. So if you have an actual system public address, you can put that there and you can link it. But right now we're using our own virtual machine, which is Kali, that we're on to do that, right? So once you modify this, take a screenshot for me and paste it here for number 17. And then you're going to save by doing Control X. Press Y for yes and enter. So after we screenshot what we modify, we're going to save and go to the next step. So as you saw that we have modified the PHP file that we can use with my SQL Server. Now this is how you install the SQL Server, the default version for the SQL Server on Linux or Kali. So you're going to go ahead and use the command sudo apt install default MySQL Server. So here we can go ahead and issue that command. And it tells me that it already exists. So you can also do MySQL Server -v for the version, just to check the version. But I always like to install the latest one in case it needs it. And then once we already know that the package is already there, we can activate it or start it by using the start command for the service. And it's going to start the MySQL service. But it does, you know, so we can always check. And if it doesn't take this, just add the sudo in front of it, right? I think it should take it, okay. So we're going to do a system control status MySQL. So I always want to check. And it shows that this is the status, right? You can do a queue to quit here or open up. So how do I know that it is running or not? If you expand, and you have to expand this. So you need to expand your terminal to see the rest of the text, right? It starts the MariaDB service, which is the database server. So MySQL actually run MariaDB. Later on in the steps, I actually have you do the Maria part in case it doesn't have it. And then it also, so that means that it's working, and this is the port information. So 3306, it's running at this socket. Okay. And then the socket is created on the loopback address. So it's enabled, right? It started. Okay, so answer this question. Then for the next step, what we're gonna do is we are going to log in. So if you have another name set for the super user instead of root, open the terminal and click on the black square, Control-Alt-T, enter the below command. So we're gonna do, let's see. And then password for Kelly, because it's sudo, we're gonna do Kelly. And then enter the password. Let's try password. Right? So it should say, welcome to MariaDB, because password was the password that we had for the database. We set that on the configuration file earlier, or the file that we modified. So now you see this, the CLI, right? So I want you to be able to have, you see that you have a connection. This is the connection ID to the database. This is MariaDB, and that's pretty easy. So now you already have a database running. Does it mean that we have database components like records? No, right? That's a different class, 61 and 62. But I want you to show you how you can enable the service so you can see. Okay. Any question? Okay, so I'm going to minimize this. This is the one that, so this is my CLI now for the DB. So I'm here at this step. You can, I'm going to modify this. You should put password. And you would see the prompt or the CLI. And then what you're going to do is now we're going to make the account. Even though we had the configuration file in the database itself, you have to make an account. So in the configuration file for PHP, we would tell it to look to issue or to use this account, but we can make an account by using this. So here, right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a user account called test user, which is the same information that we had on the configuration. And then if it takes it, it's going to pop up another arrow on the CLI. Oh, sorry. Okay. So it took that, I created an account. So whatever your user account is, you just put it in the quotation mark, like what we've seen in the configuration file. And for which system that hosts the database, that's here. Okay. And then the password. So you would say create user, the username at the system IP identified by password. Then on the next command, this is in the database CLI, you are going to control the privilege for that user. So we're going to grant all privileges to that account with that password. And if it took it fine, then it's going to pop up the next arrow. Okay. So now we want to return to our regular terminal and get out of MariaDB CLI. So you're going to do a Control D. and or type by, like what you did with FTP or exit. I tried exit before, but you can see how it says by. So Control D is gonna let you exit. So now after you do that, we accomplish the user creation. And what we're gonna do is, I think PHP is already integrated, but we can check, okay? So anytime that you start downloading and installing, we would do an update. So sudo, oops, app update. This is gonna take a minute. Okay, so since this is gonna be, so earlier we talked about certificates, right? Since this is gonna be using HTTPS, right? We are going to have to set up your certificate authority, right? Like what we've been talking about in the lecture. So now you would see it. So after I do the update, I would run the next command. This is gonna install the library for the certificate transport, okay, or the package for it. Okay, so pretty easy so far, right? As I worked out most of the fixes for these. We might run into a little bit of a problem later on, but we should be all right. So here, if you read the information, it allows you to set up SSL. There's also, so packages, this is useful. So certificate authority for transport for HTTPS. And it is Java oriented. Next. Then what we're going to do is we are going to obtain the pretty good privacy. This is for key purposes for PHP. Okay, so this is the package that we're going to use for key trust. And it shows here, right, that we complete that task. And it saves it to this path. Then next, what we're going to do is we are going to create, right? So basically when you do an echo and put it in the string like this, so that's going to add the string to the php.list file. Okay. And that file is used for configuration. So once it does that, it would put the string that you have added in the quotation mark. It displayed that here because you're using an echo. So that appends the text to the php.list file. And we know that when we do a sudo t, right, that's going to take this and put it into the file for us. Otherwise, you have to do it in multiple steps. And then we're going to do the extensions. I know that MariaDB is already there, but we just want to make sure that we get all the libraries and all the things installed properly. So if it's already installed, it'll tell you that it met the criteria. Okay, any questions so far? We're okay? All right, so make sure we know what we're running, right? It's not just about, Because my colleagues always ask me, is your class college level? Yeah, I mean, if I'm telling you to click this, if you don't know what that means, that you're not really thinking like what you're doing, right? So just following the clicks doesn't mean that you understand or apply concept. So right now, what we did was we installed the extensions that we need for our server. So far what we're doing is we're just setting up the server so we can attack it, right? We're not really doing any attacking yet. But in order to really have a full simulated environment, you have to be able to set it up. Yeah, you can install and run DVWA or WVA, but you know what? You can create your own. So next, what you're gonna do is you are going to configure Apache by accessing its directory. And we're using Apache 2. So, which is for a web server. So now we're in this folder, Apache 2, under etc, under PHP, under 8.2. Because once we install everything, these folders exist. All right. Then within that, what we're going to do is we are going to create an ini file. And ini file goes way back to the 80s, right? This file is used for system to initialize or start things. And you can think of it like a configuration file, but we're going to go ahead and make the file because it's not. So we're going to actually access it. I'm sorry. Access it. Right? You have to be in the right path. So here's the file. And if you scroll down, it might be or arrow down, it might be a while. A quick way that you can get through the search in text file or configuration file like this is if you use the feature, if you use short keys like Control W. Control W allows you to search. So we're going to modify only a couple of things. We're going to check to see if allow URL fopen is on and allow URL include is on. Okay. So we're going to do Control W and then allow underscore, right, URL. And when it finds it, it's going to highlight it in yellow and put your cursor right there. So we know that it's on. On the next one, allow URL include, it's off. So we got to make sure that we change it to on. Okay. Any question? So once you're in the ini file, you're going to search for allow URL. The fopen, the file open is on. That is its default. And then allow URL include is on. Like this. And then after we have modified the file, we are going to do Control X. And does it asks to save? Yes. Press Y and then press Enter to save the same file name. And then once we modify, you can do a restart or start. So we're going to do a sudo Apache to start. So we're going to make sure we start the service. And you can also check. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to see if it loads. So if your Apache is on, it should show Apache 4. And you can do localhost here. Right? So we know that Apache is enabled. Take a screenshot at this point. I originally wrote this step. I think that they had modified the package because remember we had database. So it should give you the database login, but I think it didn't load because they had modified a few things in here and I just didn't have time to look for where that is. But I think if you tweak the configuration a little bit, you'll be able to get the database logged on page as well. But if you get this to load, you're fine. And it tells you here that this is the default welcome page for Apache. You have to go in and modify the index file. So basically it's serving us the index right here. So our web server is working and we know that our database service is on. We can always turn it back on again. Okay, after we did this, we gotta do update again. I think you probably don't need this step. I should highlight it in a different color, so I'll remove it later. Okay, so once you have that, you can close the browser, come back to your terminal. And then I'm gonna update again. It doesn't take very long at this point. So after it runs the update, we're going to access this directory, which is where your the page file or the HTML file that is loaded for your browser to see. Okay, so once we're in this directory now, we're going to create a PHP file. And yes, you can take a PHP class with Casolero, right? But PHP in Linux is really easy. You can just make a PHP file. You can have it edited to fit CSS and so on, but okay. So we're gonna do a sudo nano hello.php. So it's blank right now because I just made a new file called hello.php. And then make sure you put things in quotation mark if you want it to display as text. So I'm just going to do welcome to my vulnerable web app. And after you close the quotation mark, it changed your text into orange. Now it knows it is a string. We're going to save it. So Control X, yes, and enter. Now, on Kali, the UFW is not enabled, but if you're using other Linux version, you can check the status of it. If it is on, you have to disable it because the link might be blocked. So now what we're gonna do is we are going to open up your browser. You can do Firefox and then HTTP localhost :80/hello.php. There you go. So now I have my PHP file working, right? It's like writing an HTML, but uses PHP. All of those steps just for that. But so when I instructed this last year, I got the login page for my database to work and everything, right? But the packages got updated. You know, like whenever I use open source tool, I have to regularly fix it. So today I was on my way to fix it, but you know, you can play with it and you can add, you can modify your PHP file to have the overlay with the login and because your database is running. So it's good. Everything is good, right? And then you can compare. So take a screenshot of this if you want. I didn't require you guys to do a screenshot. And then coming back to the terminal, we're going to restart the MariaDB. So you can open the existing terminal. You can just do sudo service MariaDB start. And then Kali, and it should start it. You can check its status. Okay, so we got our web server running. We got our PHP file working with our web server. We have a database that's activated. It's empty. There's nothing in database. I was going to write a section on where you can create some record, but you know, maybe for my ethical hacking class, we'll do some injection with a real database that we build. So we'll see. All right. For attack surface analysis, we're going to use Zap, okay? As you are learning to be an analyst, so Zap is used to analyze application, particularly web application. It is a good way for us to find some of the tools that would streamline some of the processes for us. But you would also use this when you are a security architect, pen tester, security professional. So this tool is all around useful. You can find the link here under the name of it, and then you can look up the information for the project and its source code. So it is an open source web application proxy tool. It is a good way for us to look at the vulnerability of our web app. Okay. So I don't think that Kali still has it on its menu, right? You can click on this, and I just want you to show you that there are other tools in here that you can find under the web app analysis. Previously they're in here, so you might, I looked in here before and I didn't see it. I might have missed it maybe, but Zap used to be there. But anyway, you need to install it. So we're gonna do a sudo apt install Zap proxy with 1P. And then after you install, you just call on it by using its name. This has a graphical user interface, which is really nice. So after you install, you just do Zap proxy, and it should change to blue because it exists. If it stays white, then that means something happened with the install. So it's gonna load this, right? It takes a second. It's gonna bring you to the marketplace. And if you're familiar with the prior lab, marketplace are just plugins and additional tools that you can add. So this pops up. We're gonna pick, I want to persist the session with name base, right? Current timestamp, which is the first option here. But you can specify the location where you want to save it and so on. And we're going to click start. Okay. I recommend, if you're using this tool extensively, to do a full update. And in order to see all the buttons, you have to expand your Kali and your application window all the way, right? So do this and you're going to see the buttons on the bottom. I mean, if you have it on the minimal window, it's going to be it's going to hide this. So you can pick and choose the package you want to update, right? It lists the ones that you should update. I normally am lazy to click through, so I just click update all. But if you do use the tool extensively, update, and it gives you the status here. So basically, you know, instead of updating one by one, we can update everything through the actual tool. Once everything shows to be 100, after, you know, this thing pop up and disappear for a few times, you can click close and it's going to bring you back to the app UI. Okay, I think we're good, right? All the percentages are gone. So we're going to click close. So here's the app. And you can expand it so you can see everything. So what we'll do is we are going to scan ourselves, right? We're going to click the automated scan. They changed the feature on this, but you can also check out some of the things at the top here if you want to modify the layout and you know, using some of the tools here, right? Like if I want to do Ajax spider where it cross, we can add in the spider component. And then, you know, if you want to do fuzzing, there are a lot of different really great things that Zap can do. I really like this tool. So click automated, and this is where you're going to pick your target. Okay. So on here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna put in your target. You can do a local host. You can do an IP address. So I'm gonna do an IP address instead of a local host. So we can do 10.0.2.15 to see if it reads. And then we're going to do hello.php, right? And you know, you can specify the port if you want. So once you have it, click attack. And if it works, it's gonna do a get. That means that the server is displaying the, you know, welcome to my vulnerable app, and then it has some posts and it's gonna run. So because your web app doesn't have a lot of content or features and components, it's gonna be very quick. Just keep in mind that it doesn't always is like that realistically, right? We only have like one PHP file. In regular websites, you're gonna see that in the regular web app, you already know they have menus, they have multiple tabs, they have different things. Some of it is authenticating, some of it is not. So here it's giving you some information in details, and you can expand each of this to tell you, right? It's gonna tell you, is there hidden files? Is there missing type of header? And that is for clickjacking. Is there potential server leaks? And are there missing things? So it does an audit for you for your web app. And it's a good tool to kind of begin seeing, okay, where do I go back to kind of fix some of the problem? And then dig a little bit deeper using this tool or additional tool. Okay. All right, screenshot, close Zap. Now we do Honeypot. Okay, so with Zap, database has to exist, right? Because it's using database, it's using a lot of things. So as you can see here. All right, now, for Honeypot, we're gonna do Pentbox. So we're gonna up our privilege to root by doing sudo su. And remember that if you get from one to the next terminal, just keep in mind that you regularly operate with root privilege. So make sure you get back to that. We've learned that before. And what we're gonna do a git clone of the Pentbox. And then once you have Pentbox, you're gonna open it by accessing its directory. So you're gonna do a cd Pentbox. Make sure we look at the path, we're inside it. And then we're gonna extract it. Or decompress. Tars GZ. Okay. So down the line when you're using this is my recommendation for you. Pay attention to the version and the directory name. Sometimes they modify that, right? A lot of the, you know, if they change developer or a different group working on it, you would see that they modify and the version number. So in the next step, you're going to refer to the subdirectory. And so it's always good to do an ls to kind of see, right? This is the file that I extracted. So I use this file to extract this folder, or this folder to extract this, okay? Just like how you right click and use 7-zip earlier for Kali. So now you have this. So now you're gonna get into this directory to access it. You can always refer to their README or their GitHub information. And then we are going to do this. So we're going to get into the version 1.8, and then we're going to list the content. Okay. So we're inside this directory, and then we're looking at what's inside it now. We see that there is the RB, and you're going to use that in order to execute. So we are using shell to run this. Okay, so it is console based, right? It might not look the prettiest, but it is a tool. So you have encryption, networking tools, web, IP grabber, geolocation by IP, mass attack, and their licensed information. So you're gonna press 2 for networking tools. So just type in 2 and press enter, and it's gonna bring you to the next menu. So as you know, as you guys are analysts, you might perform a few things, right? TCP port scanner is, gonna be similar to Nmap. If you want to do denial of service attack to test the limit of your system, we don't really attack. We test the limit of the system. You can do a DOS. There's fuzzer, DNS, host gatherer that basically is a way that you can cache DNS information, and then MAC address by geolocation. So once you have that selection, that menu, you're gonna press 3 for Honeypot, because that's the whole point in this exercise for us, right? And then what you're gonna do is you are going to do an auto configuration options. We're gonna make our server a honeypot. So, because it's already a web and a database, a fake one, right? We're gonna do a fast auto configuration. What happened? Did it not load?
For the use,
Oh yeah, so we have to disable.
I did a manual.
I'm sorry.
Instead of auto configuration, I just selected option 2 and did a manual.
Yeah. So let's see, we did what for the 2, and then 3, and then option 2. Insert port to open 80. Oh. Insert message to show. So false message.
I personally did just a perform it.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah, you can just put anything there. So if the auto configuration doesn't work, let me add that. Or select 2, then enter 80 and a message such as. Some of the program doesn't like symbols, so we just gotta make sure. All right. And then we want to save this. Right. Then we open up our browser.
Still not running.
Is it? Yeah, it's possible that because it's using it for this.
No, I mean, you're still missing steps. But
Oh, I'm sorry. Good. Let me see.
you press enter, it'll go to the next one.
Activate the beep sound and the choosing yes. So
It still says port in use. I use port 8080 to fix that
yeah,
instead of 80.
it's a good idea. I think you can do. Yeah, make a note. It's not working. Use. Yeah. So let's do 2. Let me fix that. 3. And then what you're gonna do is we're gonna do option 2, 8080, and then press that, and then we're gonna click save. So let me document that. Set save by pressing Y. And then press enter. Proceed. And then activate, yes, right? Now it works. Okay, so now after you activated your honeypot, remember we modified this to, I'll highlight this, so if it doesn't work for you, you can try option 2. And then we can visit, right? You can do localhost 8080 or the loopback address. So let's try, take this out. Or you can disable, plus you can disable your web server. So it shows haha, but you know, you should make it like real. So you say, welcome to my vulnerable web app or my website. So when it works, it's going to show you all of the information here that, you know, what kind of browser I'm using. So it's grabbing the browser header. So now you had set up a honeypot. So take a screenshot and you determine if the honeypot is running. I just said that, right? This shows up. It shows the timestamp of activation. It also shows the status of your web response and request and response. How should you access this to gather information for analysis? So you would use log configuration features of it. So access the honeypot logs. As you setting it up, it tells you where it stores the files and all of that. So pay attention to those paths. That's very important, right? We don't just press enter and proceed and whatnot, but. So upon completion this lab, what do we learn about the vulnerable web app that we created? Right? We have to enable the vulnerable web app. We had enable Apache services and database services and use PHP to get our server working, and it uses port 80 by default. After that, we use Zap to do what? Zap proxy was to, and test what? Yeah, so to assess our vulnerable web app. So it looks at like all the vulnerability or the lack of security control on our website. And then what did we learn about Honeypot? That we use Pentbox. We can easily set up Honeypot using port 80 or port 8080. Right? Using Pentbox. And we can configure it so that way it can report all the information of potential attack or activity on that system. How can you use this for infrastructure protection? Well, you can use it to determine security gaps or attack patterns in web servers or web app. You can say that, yeah. Very good. Any question? And then when we're done, right, you can hit Control C to cancel everything. And then we can do shutdown now. And it is a good day when we don't have too much hiccups. Let me stop recording.